We are working using sources and data flows. The sources will collect the data, either using a pull mechanism where it will pull the data out of an API, or a push mechanism where you can push data towards us. One of the examples, we can just receive the Amazon SNS notifications in our system to further process those. So as you can see here, we support CloudTrail, Azure Log Analytics, Google Cloud Audit logs. We have an HTTP endpoint where we receive SNS messages about the objects that are the logs that are being put on a bucket. And we have some other bricks that are either an auditing tool or a cost analyzer where we are collecting some metrics and analyzing the costs. And everything comes together within our data flows. So we have a data flow where we process the data. So we collect the data. This is in the CloudTrail native format. A quick look, this is the native format of CloudTrail. And within our system, we are using the Elastic Common Schema as one ontology for the complete application. And this is the next step we are taking to transform everything to the Elastic Common Schema. Next is to enrich all the data with some extra information like the reverse host, the public suffixes, because it could be interesting as well. To enrich the data, the IP addresses with geo-specific locations so we can show it in a map. And then in parallel, 3 different steps are running. So the first one, store all the events in Elasticsearch. So we have them stored. The next one will be to extract the relationships out of the documents and create a graph model out of it. And then we have our Sigma rulings, which will generate alerts based on specific occurrences like a console login or users being created. We filter out false positives because we know those certain, there are some alerts that could be happening in this specific environment, and all the alerts are being stored in Elasticsearch as well. And the nice thing about this is this middleware, we can configure it to quickly add, for example, Splunk. If we also want to store data in Splunk, we will just create add a Splunk brick, create a link to it, configure the URL and the token, and all the data that is currently in this specific brick will also be sent to Splunk. The other data sources are being shown here as well. So we have the auditing brick. I will show you in more depth later what this brick will do. We are collecting the VPC logs, the Elastic Load Balancing logs, and the cost analyzer.
Remco, there's a question, if I may, about if you are basically in management or not deep in programming, do you need to have Python skills in order to do what you are just doing here?
No. So we have we call it a marketplace, and the marketplace contains a lot of different bricks. For example, if you want to send data to send an alert to a ticketing system, you will just add the ticketing brick to it. If you want to send it to to Kafka, for example, a message queue, just click on it, add it, and the only thing you need to do is configure the Kafka server.
Great. And the follow-up question is how much training does it need to do what you just have been doing for anyone?
So we are delivering the solution with some predefined flows. So the flow, as you see here, is predefined, and you can use it as it is. And the only thing you need to do is to work with the analyzer and to look at the alerts. So not that much of a training. I think if you just play around with it for a day, you get around already.
Okay.
Are there more questions, or can I go a little
No,
bit more?
you can go in the more detailed flow now if you like.
Okay. let me continue with the data flow. So I just showed you how the CloudTrail data is looking. But the first step we are doing is to transform it to the Elastic Common Schema. And the Elastic Common Schema is a really interesting scheme. It is a predefined format for where you want the source IP address, for example, how you should put the cloud configuration. And it is all defined in the Elastic Common Schema, and it's also exchangeable with other environments. So all the fields are mapped to the correlating fields in the fields of the Elastic Common Scheme. The next step will be to
Remco, sorry to interrupt. There's one question from Wouter. How are the alerts set?
I will get back to that later. Okay.
Okay, great.
My break. So the enrichment of the IP addresses. Let me find it. This is normally you will only see the IP address located here. And what this brick is doing, it will add some information about the autonomous system, the reverse host, and the registered domain and top level domain. And that correlates also with this brick, where we also add the geolocation for this specific type of data. So you can also enrich it with systems from your asset management, for example, or some internal systems. We are supplying some default bricks that will add this kind of data. The question from Wouter about the alerting. So we are using a Sigma brick to generate the alerts, and we have a predefined format of all I believe 40, 50 rules that will trigger on, like this one on the API call on list secrets where an access has been denied. And we can show and share the rule set as well. About the auditing tool, I don't know if anyone that is using a cloud at the moment ever has been running a auditing tool against their environment, but it can deliver a lot of interesting insights. For example, this auditing tool has been run on the Floss Cloud, and it will show you some information like, hey, it would be good if you enable multi-factor authentication for those specific users. We see certain credentials that have been unused for 90 days or greater. And this is very relevant and very interesting data to act upon. And this happens every single morning to give you an update on what are the open issues and what has been resolved.
Remco, there's one question from Sander. Now I already have my own filters and algorithms developed for some part of the monitoring. Can I integrate this, or does the system run in parallel? How open is it?
It is open, so you can add your own rule sets. You can add your own rule sets on top of ours. It is completely open.
Okay, thank you.
The interesting thing with what we are, you also have the virtual private clouds, and the virtual private clouds have the possibility to collect net flow information and store it on a bucket. And what we are doing is, if it is being stored on a bucket, a SNS notification is being sent to our environment, to our endpoint. And about the endpoint is also very interesting. We support natively ingestion of file-B data. You can talk using RabbitMQ. You can do as if our systems are RabbitMQ. We emulate the Elasticsearch protocol. So you have a lot of possibilities to ingest data into our systems. So what happens with the VPC logs, we get the SNS notification that a new log has been put on a specific bucket. And the next steps within this source are downloading the specific file, processing the file, and transforming it to Elastic Common Schema again. And the same happens for the Elastic Load Balancing. And the cost analyzer, what we are doing in the cost analyzer, for example, you have an instance and we see that over a period of weeks, the CPU has not been raised about more than 10%. So that could be an interesting indicator of an over-provisioned instance. It's also something you will be alerted of.
So Remco, what you're saying here is with the cost analyzer, this really on a daily basis could show you whether you are actually overpaying AWS or Azure or anyone else.
Yeah, exactly. And also in one environment.
Okay.
So if you want to configure additional sources, you will just, we have a predefined set of source types. We have many more, but for this specific cloud monitoring, we only enabled those 5. For example, if you want to add a extra AWS CloudTrail environment, you will give it a name. So this is the CloudTrail for our corporate cloud. You'll enter your access key, your secret key. If you want to monitor one region or all regions, how much history do you want to collect? So at first you want to collect 90 days and you want to do it for every 50 minutes. CloudTrail works with a delay of 50 minutes. Just add, and the middleware will automatically spin up instances to collect all the events. We are showing some extra information about how to configure and what permissions does the CloudTrail need, the CloudTrail access token. So it is easy to configure your cloud on a secure way. Now back to the analyzer. So all the events that are happening within the cloud are shown here. And you can just use the common query bar to filter out certain events. Like now I want to filter out all the event actions that are related to a console login. And what I can do with, for example, the username or the source IP, I can click on it and it will show the events for this specific IP address. It will show the indicators that have been found for this specific IP address, like this IP address has been related to the security user. But if they are using different users or different accounts, or if there are different indicators, it will be shown here. It will show the events, and you can also click on the events to compare them with each other. And it will show in blue the differences and in green the similarities. You can just drive through your complete environment by clicking on other IP addresses, on users, and find out what is really happening. Our Sigma rulings are also giving an overview of the DTACT framework. So, for example, initial access defines someone has gained access to your console, which could be an issue. If a user account is being created, it will show that someone is trying to persist inside your infrastructure. The alerts, you see it here, 13,000 events and 111 alerts. There are a little bit more alerts at this moment because it is a cloud that is encouraging people to attack it. It will show you the notable events. So you have a console login, someone is enumerating the environment, maybe even some user accounts that are being created. It will all show here as an alert. All the data we are collecting is enriched. So you see the source geo information, you will see the user agent that has been used, you will see the Sigma ruling for this specific event. we are collecting the related IPs and the related users and eventually the related hashes to be able to create a graph and to create context between all the events. And if you have multiple clouds, they will be shown all in this type of events and the alerts.
Remco, we have a question from Wouter. How does this tool compare to NDR solutions like ExtraHop and Vectra that also have cloud monitoring capability?
Yeah, one thing that's different. So we have the complete process. So we have a lot of ingestion possibilities. You can do the cloud monitoring, but you can also add event logs for local machines, for example. You can have one solution for everything. But what you eventually can also do is to add SOAR capabilities. So, for example, if there's an alert and the alert consists of a specific amount of facts, so 3 times in a row, we have seen this user trying to brute force, we can automatically deny this specific IP. We can block the IP address, for example. So it extends also to SOAR capabilities, and that's a complete A to Z solution for all your security needs.
Okay.
Are there any more questions? Because I've shown, I think, everything I wanted to show. So there are also some maybe one extra thing to tell. Mm-hmm. The system is completely multi-tenant, so you can share flows and data sources with other teams. So especially for the larger companies, it is easy to share the Cloudtrail data with another team that will do different things on it.
There are no questions at the moment, Remco. So if there is, maybe you can summarize again, both for the general management view, what is it actually what we're looking at, and why should I be bothered, and as well then for the coders and developers who actually might think, what is the difference to other solutions out there? I won't name anyone, but I think we all know which one we're talking about in the area of SIEM and SOAR. What is actually different here, and why do we think we are busting a myth here?
So for management, we support multiple overviews. We have custom dashboards for management, and we have custom dashboards for engineers that they all want to see different data. What we also have within our flows is to go completely in depth. If you are an engineer and you want to find out a specific occurrence of a specific data, you can write your own Python or TypeScript or Lua scripts. So for both the management and for the engineers, you can do a lot with the system.
Okay, there's one more extra question. Can we have a demonstration of the search functionality or queries?
Yeah, so we have the query bar. We can just type the queries like this. And what you can do is also store the query as a saved query. And if you store it as a saved query, you can easily get back to it again, find out the new events and alerts related to this specific query. What we are using here is similar to the Elastic query syntax. And this is how it works. We are also adding faceted search, which will be an important improvement.
Okay, great. Is there anything else you would like to show us right now?
Maybe a little bit more about the middleware. So what we do within the middleware, we collect events and we have a scalable architecture at the backend. So if we collect more events than we can handle, we will automatically scale the backend, start extra containers working with the data, and if the workload declines, we will just stop the containers and be appropriate to the amount of events we collect. We can also schedule bricks, so we can, for example, send an SMTP or send an email alert every morning that will process all the alerts of that specific day or night. Using the scheduling, there's a retentioning possibility where we can define how long we want to keep the data. Yeah, those things. The system is very flexible. We also have a phishing use case where we just created a complete phishing analysis suite using this middleware. It is a SaaS solution. It will only take at maximum 1 hour to deploy it. So you will create a user account. We will help you set up the data flow, which we soon have templated. So it will be ready if you log in. And it will only take 1 hour to see the events. If you take a look at the this specific demo environment, it only took 30 minutes. Yeah, so what I showed you today is a solution to work with data, to process the data, to transform the data, and eventually create actionable alerts out of it. To extract relationships out of the data using simple bricks, showing the all the events within one environment for all your different cloud environments, and then an easy dashboard to find out what's going on within all the environments.